So today we are continuing a series that I've been meaning to go over, and life has just been one of those things where it just kind of ends up on the back burner and you just kind of forget. This is X Factor number 66. This is part 2 of Endgame. We went over 65 a while back, so I will eventually, once we finish this, create a playlist so that you guys can check it out, and I'll try to put the books at the top of the little cards here in this review. And this is where things really start to kick off. Last issue, we got the first appearance of the Dark Riders, though at this point they were called Riders of the Storm, which I'm so glad that they changed the name, because every time I hear that, all I can think of is Jim Morrison and the Doors. So beware the wrath of Apocalypse. The print date on this was May 1991. Apocalypse has come back in full force to show those who oppose him will die. Last issue, we saw that they did something to ship, because at this point, X Factor had been living out of a ship that they had commandeered from Apocalypse. Come to find out it was a sentient being, so it was one of their friends, as well as their base of operations. So, what Apocalypse did with his Dark Riders, I'm going to call them the Dark Riders, because that Riders of the Storm, definitely one of the weaker names, just starts to infect all over New York City. Now, before this, I believe there was not a word for the techno-organic virus, or at least it hadn't really been focused on yet. So this is Heroic Effort. This is Jim Lee and Willis Botascio doing the plot, Chris Claremont the script, Willis Botascio doing the pencils, Art Thibert inks, Pat Brousseau doing the lettering, Glennis Oliver and Tom Buccoletto doing the color. Is that right? Yeah, Buccoletto doing the colors, Bob Harris, editor, and Tom DeFalco, editor-in-chief. So for this series, guys, we got some big friggin' names on this book, and I'm hoping that one day this Endgame event will go down in the annals of history, just like the Dark Phoenix saga, just like Days of Future Past, because this starts building up the origins of Cable. Because remember, Cable's real name is Nathan Christopher Summers, so they eventually tied what Rob Liefeld had created with Cable, and Chris Claremont and Jim Lee and Willis Botascio just kind of took it and ran to kind of give some more story to the baby that Cyclops and Madeline Pryor had. And I love how this splash page that we get, just seeing what's happening with SHIP and what it's doing to the whole city. And this poor guy goes, "Is you taking me to heaven? But you're all colored funny, and Wings, they're screaming. You're from the other place, ain't you? Help me, somebody, help me. He's come to cast me into the bottomless pit of eternal torment." And Warren's just like, give me a break. Even if that were true, pal, I doubt there's anything that could be done down there that's worse than what you've already done to yourself. And that's one thing about Warren at this time period, is even though he had broken the hold that Apocalypse had on him. And remember, Warren, to a degree, has always been a little bit of a hothead, because he just was born into money. So he kind of had that sort of, as they used to call Zach, was his name from Save by the Bell. Remember how Slater would always call him Preppy? He kind of had that prestigious attitude. But after everything that's happened to him, going through being an X-Man, literally losing his wings to the mutant massacre, he has a bit of a chip on his shoulder. He's having to fight Apocalypse's programming, and it was a long time before Warren really started to sound like himself. And even now, he still struggles with it. And what I love here is how the team said, let's point out to how deep this is affecting everybody. So we go down to Brooklyn. We see Captain America trying to save everyone. We see the Fantastic Four, and I love how things just like, what a revolting development. Tell you straight, Torch, this ain't gonna do X Factors any rep, any good, any favors. Truth and a half thing, but Ben, if X Factor's ship's gone nuts, what do you think it's done to them? And then this is the She-Hulk that we all know. We're not gonna get into the TV show. No. Anyway, I love how Jennifer just says, do you mind? Do you mind? Can a lawyer practice her profession just once without her case being terminally disrupted by the attack of the mile-high psychotic starship? And again, yes, She-Hulk, like Deadpool, is sort of a fourth wall breaker, and that was very much one of her things during the John Byrne run. And I love that Claremont again, even though I try to look past the fact that they had a falling out, from what I understand. They at least learn from each other, and you can see in the way that they do storytelling. Claremont always with the X-Men, Byrne with Alpha Flight, Superman, even though he did go a little batshit crazy on that one, She-Hulk, Exedra, so forth, and the Fantastic Four, which I'm wanting to eventually get through. If you guys know, I know I could look it up online, but if y'all know, and I'd rather ask the community, but if you guys know what issues was John Byrne's run on Fantastic Four, let me know, so next time that I'm out and about, I could try to grab them, or at least start to, because I've heard that it's fun, and I definitely want to check it out, and I eventually do want to go over some of the early George Perez Fantastic Four that I have sitting around. I forget that I have. Anyway, that was a tangent, sorry. Going back to talking about the fourth wall break, and I love how here where she's punching this tentacle. Yeah, that sounds like a really bad hentai, right? Anyway, she says, geez, with a title like that, you'd think this was my own adventures. What comes next? Return of the Terrible Toadmen? This was back when comics could be quirky and not feel, what's the word I'm looking for? Where it could be quirky and have like sarcastic humor, dry humor, or just blatant comedy without it feeling like rainbows and ponies and MySpace.com. I know that that's a dated reference, but you guys get the idea of what I'm talking about in a lot of modern comics where you don't get this level of artwork anymore or storytelling. So this is one of the Dark Riders. His name's Hard Drive, I believe. And Jean just gets hit hard. She finds out what they're going to do to Nathan. And I just love how Hard Drive here says, sneaky little Psywitch, precious good your insides will do, tee. Once Hard Drive shuts you down as permanently as I do your traitor ship. And we just see her just, ah. And of course, Scott, Jean. That's the one thing that I will say from both the animated series and the comics is, it's supposed to be dramatic, but the way he's always like, Jean, it's like, you're supposed to be the fearless leader, as Beast calls you. Maybe focus up a little bit. I get being concerned because she's both your, wasn't the wife yet. Oh, so let's take a little tangent again, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? I was looking up the wiki for this particular issue, and apparently from what it said that this issue was supposed to be somehow implement the wedding of Scott and Jean. I'm glad that they held off. Because with everything that's going on with Askani and Clan Askani, which I think this is the first appearance or something like that. It's either this one or the next one. I forget. I think it's the next one. Anyway, it just would have been too much. And I feel like it would have just been wasted, as where when they did it in, what was it, X-Men 25? Yeah, I think it was 25. And then they had that giant-sized issue, which we will eventually go over those. I'm trying to find it. No, 25 was when Wolverine got his adamantium pulled out. It was earlier than that. Anyway, they did the issue in X-Men, the 92 or the 90s X-Men Volume 2, and then they did this giant size book. And I want to go over both of them, but I'm trying to find another copy of the X-Men comics. The one that I I had it signed by Fabian Nikizia, and I don't want to open that one, and I don't want to go over the giant one until we've gone over that one. So if you guys know where I can get another copy of The Wedding of Scott and Jean, kick it my way, please. I'd appreciate you guys. Anyway, the battle ensues on ship, and this character, I can't remember his name, finally gets to where Nathan is peacefully sleeping. He doesn't know what's going on yet. And one thing that I will say, when I first read this series years ago, it tore at me as another human being to another human being, and I'm like, this is hurtful. But now that I've had my son and he's 5, just seeing this guy's like, don't touch him, you bastard, because he's like such a pretty lad, so innocent of facade, such infinite potential according to the boss. Called it straight and clear, Hard Drive, using ship systems that you've seized control of to enclose the boy inside this very own carry cot. Nothing to disturb his slumber. Still thinking he's among family. No need for me to worry about him using his telekinetic powers to try and carry him away. And at that moment, I just love how Askani breaks in and she goes, nothing perhaps from the Lord Nathan, villain, but everything to fear from his chosen and sworn protector. And I wish, if you guys know if there's any more, I appearances of Askani, which I don't think they are, because as we get into the next issue, we figure out what she had to sacrifice to come back into time to protect both the clan Askani and, as she calls her kinsman, which is the X-Men. And she stops for a moment. She hesitates. She goes, "Praise the light, I arrived in time. Our rescans of the time are dangerously scattered. We knew you were at hazard, but not the precise nature until I swaved in. Should have realized it'd be Apocalypse. He wants to savage you the way he did our father. I wish I had power to spare for more than a mind tag. So much you need to know that I wish I could tell you. These are the last moments of your childhood, the end of innocence." Whew, that is some writing. But because she paused for a moment, she loses the boy. And it's kind of one of those things of all hope is lost type moments, but it's done in a very good storytelling way. Now, another thing, this character here, I can't remember her name. They call her Jonesy here, but I cannot remember her name off the top of my head. But she's with Warren at this point. And I wish, because I don't recall after Endgame, I don't remember seeing her anywhere else. If you guys know any other appearances where she showed up, let me know. And help me remember, but wasn't she the same? I'm not sure if this is the same character, but there was an issue of Uncanny X-Men when the teams were still kind of separated, and the only ones that were still operating essentially in New York was Banshee and Forge. And they found a woman in the sewers, in the Morlock sewers, and I think it was her, and they helped save her, but I can't remember. But she, kind of like how Stevie, again, another character that we all enjoyed, disappeared. She was another one. But because she has ties to Warren, she is the only one that can enter the ship, because according to Ship, the way his defenses are is if you're not a mutant, you don't let in. But apparently she has the exception. And then the latter half of the book is basically just a ticking clock, because the X-Men are trying to communicate with Ship to find out what's going on. And the only way Beast can do that is essentially hardwire and interfacing with Ship to talk to him. He goes, "I shall not permit that, Beast. As Jean intuited before she was struck down, my programming is terminal. Only our new installed fiber optic network remains invalid, Beast. In all fairness, I cannot guarantee its long-term integrity." So he says that he will not become a slave to Apocalypse again. But he starts to take drastic measures. And Cyclops tells him, what you're choosing, that's not the way to go. Listen to the way this is written. You talk about your hatred of Apocalypse, your absolute refusal to be enslaved by him again, yet you're perfectly prepared to cede him a great victory. In one stroke, you rid him of the only beings you've ever beaten, yourself and us. Moreover, he's got my son to use however he pleases. Can you let him do that? Life and freedom mean nothing if you aren't prepared to fight for them. Give up Ship and you prove to Apocalypse that you're as much of a slave now as you ever were. Is that what you want? And that's what I like about Cyclops is, again, I've talked about it several times, is yes, he can be a dick, and it's hard to like him, especially after Avengers versus X-Men. But he's always having to make the hard choices. And essentially that's what happens in this issue of Endgame. Askani feels lost. She feels that she is basically given up any chances that her clan has to survive in the future. All hope is lost for what we feel for Ship, and we don't know what happens to our heroes, which why this book is aptly called Beware the Wrath of Apocalypse. Gorgeous artwork, excellent paneling and pacing, and through all this, through all the destruction, the only one that has any type of levity is Beast. When he says, "I'm on it, oh fearless leader," and why they're in the midst of thinking that they're all gonna die, Cyclops says, "If you can figure this out, I'll forget that annoys me, and you can continue to call me that." These are the X-Men we know, not these pod people from Krakoa or the Rising from the Ashes version that we see now. It's what I loved about this era of the X-Men when all these books exploded on the scene. X Factor, X-Force, Generation X. Well, this one's kind of before all that. As I just said, during this time period, there was only this, New Mutants, and then X Factor came on the scene. But at least in all three of those books, the characters and the storytelling was all streamlined to the effect that they all bumped into one another, and it was fun, and it made you want to go get the rest of the books instead of feeling like it was a chore. This was a time to be an X-Men fan. So if you guys have enjoyed what you've seen, please first and foremost support your local comic shop or where it is like to get your action figures and comics and grab this series. It ran from issue 65 to 68, and then 69 started picking up where Alex and the new X-Force team came on the scene. And if you've enjoyed this review, I really would appreciate if you taking a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Helps the channel more than you could possibly know. And if you don't mind hitting that fancy X bell next, subscribe. That way as I get to upload content, you guys get notified. Come to the channel, and I love talking with y'all and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments below or the socials, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, hope y'all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, everyone.